Shred Nation, this is a hand shape by a shaper that we've never featured before, but if you follow our friends on Instagram at Board Porn, then you've probably already seen album Surfboards over and over again in your feed, usually recognizable for their creative use of color like we see here on all of their varied shapes, which you can see for yourself at their shop just a few steps from the sand in San Clemente. Now, a few weeks ago I posted a couple photos of an album board to Shred Show's Instagram. They show a mid-length board called The Darkness, and it got by far the most likes of anything that we've ever put on that account, and a lot of people asked us to put it on Shred Show. But since the one that I had made for 1 foot waves around my house looks kind of invisible depending on how you hold it in Studio Shred, I went to Matt, who runs the show at Album, and he let me borrow this one to film today. Anyway, for those of you asking us to do some type of a fun board shape, consider this board and this episode today a shout out to you. Shred Nation, you don't need me to tell you that this board will float you. In fact, it would paddle and catch waves easier than anything we've ever done on Shred Show, and while that might be obvious, what might require a little bit more thinking is deciding what fins to use in this board when you have so many options. When you put a single fin this big into your board, it makes the board feel very stable and also a little bit slower as it moves down the line. That's actually one of the reasons that longboards with an emphasis on nose riding use such big single fins, because it slows down the board to keep it at pace with the pocket of the wave. You can see how big this single fin is by putting it next to another single fin that you would probably surf in like a 6-foot board, not a board that's 7 feet long by 22 wide and 2.88 thick like this board is. Now, if you were going to surf this board with this fin, you could probably find that you could scoot your stance very far up on the board and ride the board from way up here while still feeling very stable as you glide and trim forward on the water. Because even with your weight way up here on the board, a fin this big and deep can keep things incredibly stable behind you because of how deep the fin is protruding into the water as it trims through it. But if you could magically change this board from a single fin to a quad fin set while you were surfing it on that exact same wave, you might instantly feel a lot of drift in the tail behind you as the board moves forward on the water. And instead of just camping out and chilling up here while you watch water glide by around you, you might find yourself much more focused on keeping stable and balanced moving forward, because with a quad you wouldn't have this big rudder back there in the water keeping the board stable even when your weight wasn't back here forcibly engaging the fins beneath the board. However, with the board still set up as a quad, you would find that you could move your stance back, put your weight over that quad fin cluster beneath you, and you'd feel more of that drive and thrust and ability to pump the board a little bit more similar to what you would feel surfing a short board. So what's the point? Generally, in a board that looks roughly like this one, you can surf the board more forward with easier glide and trim and smooth flow down the line if you set it up with a big single fin, and you can ride the board with your stance more backward with more drive and pump ability, we'll call it, if you set it up as a quad. Now look at the outline on this board and we can see that it's probably suited best for trimming and gliding with your weight at about the middle point or possibly forward. We can see that because of just how narrow the tail gets back there relative to just how wide the board becomes from about here as it moves forward. Since this area right here is where most of your width happens, it's pretty obvious you'll spend a lot of your time with your feet about right here, and you would probably like this kind of a shape most set up as a single fin. However, if you look at this board side by side with the one that I had made, you can see that on my tail it's maybe like 1/2 inch to 1 inch wider. And what that does on my shape is it adds a little bit more surface area back here in the tail, so that when the waves are really small, say knee high or so, maybe mid thigh, you can surf that board and get a little bit more resistance and support under your back foot to try to get the board pumping and flowing down the line just a little bit. And I think that board is suited just a little bit more to being set up as a quad, while the tail coming back this narrow is a little bit more suited to being set up as a single fin. Either board, no matter what the width of the tail, can work either as a quad or a single fin. It's just a little bit of a modification that you can make when you order this shape. You can order the tail a little bit wider to really optimize it for being set up as a quad with a bit more pump and flow. And you can order the tail just like this to really optimize it for a single fin with a bit more trim and glide. Something else about this board relative to other shapes that are similar is just how thick it is. This board is probably about 1/8 of an inch thicker than other comparable shapes, and that contributes to a lot of on top of the water feel, not feeling like you're down in the water. And you may even find yourself inexplicably moving towards the beach still, even when the wave is nothing but the fuzzy remnants of whitewater. Really quick, the rocker on this board is obviously very low. If you compare this to the Firewire Submoon that we featured a few episodes ago, this board has about 1/2 of an inch less nose rocker, and it also has about 3/4 of an inch less tail rocker. Rolled up in the nose, quickly turning into a single concave, long single concave, becoming flat at the single fin box, turning into a V all the way out the tail. To wrap this up, it's pretty obvious why you would want to surf a shape like this. Either you're new to surfing and need something that will help your wave count, or you've been surfing for long enough to understand that on some days you just don't really want to have to work for anything. You'd probably find it most fun in waves about 6 inches up to about 4 foot, especially when they have crumbling lips and wide open faces. And around Southern California, that means a lot of the rocky reefs that can be pretty perfect even when they're small. Now, Shred Nation, if you would like to participate in a little bit of an experiment with us, you can go to Album Surf in San Clemente or contact them at the info down below and order yourself a darkness within the next 7 days, and you will get a bro deal and pay less for this board than someone who just walks in off the street. For more info, click on the Show More section down below. That's it for this episode. We hope the waves are fun and the tacos are tasty wherever you call home, and we'll see you soon on